I know you're a big Seinfeld fan.
Yeah.
And I was reading something about Seinfeld, and I really thought it had... I said I wasn't going to mention before.
Seinfeld is a American sitcom from the 90s.
Yes, sorry, for our gentle listeners who I'm sure don't watch American sitcoms from the 90s. It's quite a famous
it didn't really do well over here. It never really played much over here.
I think it did. You think it didn't?
No. You could get it over here, but it was like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
It was never a prime time show here. It didn't translate well. I thought it was excellent.
It actually transformed comedy because it was the first... Because when we were very young, and you're a lot younger than me, Nick, but when we were very young, a lot of the comedy shows we watched were things like The Cosby Show and different... And they were very kind of moralistic...
Yeah. Sweet and sickly.
Yeah, and they would send a little message at the end about you've got to love this or whatever. Yeah. Then Seinfeld came along, and the central characters were Seinfeld himself, Jerry Seinfeld, who played himself in George Costanza.
None of them are very nice.
Yeah, and they're all selfish, self-obsessed, and really every show was about them doing something for their own self-interest, and generally it backfired. Maybe that was a message in it, basically. But even when things did backfire and things went horribly wrong, they always ended up being happy and carrying on with their lives.
And they never realised it was all down to them.
They never realised it was down to them. And apparently, I was reading about the actual guys who wrote it, and one of the writing dictum, famous dictum, for the writers that Jerry Seinfeld said they had to follow was no hugging and no learning, basically. Yeah. And that, if you think about it, there is no hugging and there's no learning. There's no little moral message rammed down your throat in Seinfeld. You know, I mean, there is one episode where I think George was going to get married, and he kept waiting. He was hoping that his wife would die, so his fiancée would die, so he wouldn't have to marry her. I think he tried to poison it anyway.
He buys the cheapest envelopes for the wedding invitation.
That's it, yes.
And they were off the market, and he got them really cheap online. And they're off the market because the glue was poisoned. Yeah. And he makes her do them all. And because she's like 3,000 envelopes, she dies of this poison.
She died of poison. But rather than being upset, he was thrilled that he managed to get out of the wedding. So it was that kind of humour, which is just superb humour. And in a way, I think there's parallels to Reform here, because I think Reform is saying, no hugging, no learning here, guys. We get back to basically looking after ourselves, not being constantly mollycoddled or whatever, and we get out there and start looking after Britain and ourselves, basically. I think that is kind of their message, and it's kind of stepping away from, let's be kind and all that. There's none of this be kind crap. It's like, this is the reality. This is the reality of our situation. These are the very clinical, clear things we have to do. You know, and it's not about being kind to immigrants or whatever. It's about looking after us, and that's what Seinfeld was about. It's about self-interest. What could they do to promote and progress themselves? Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, is there?
I think they've found a real niche Reform in this, and the niche is treat the voter like adults. Stop having opinion groups work out the best way of phrasing that policy to make it pink and fluffy, and they've gone, no, we're a bit like me, we're just going to go, that's it.
Yeah.
Clear, simple, as few words as possible, no fancy words, so no one gets confused or misunderstand. No, this is what we're doing. Bang, 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 bang. And I hope the voter likes that and appreciates that, because what they're doing is they're treating the voter as an adult.
Yes.
We're not having to make it pink and fluffy. We're not trying to hide anything from you under fancy words and the different agenda. We're telling you what needs to be done and how it's going to be done. And then you've got the information and you need to vote on that or not.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're missing that. We've missed that for decades now. Thatcher was the last person to do that.
I think you should have that as the strapline under your campaign. Nick Buckley MBE, no hugging, no learning, basically.
My phrase that I've been using for a good decade now is no more pink and fluffy.
That's good.
That's been my mantra, no more pink and fluffy.
Yeah. And I think you're right, it's gone on too long. So every single statement that the other parties make has to be qualified by being inclusive of this or that or the other, and they can't ever just say this is what we're going to do. So it's kind of, so you know, even their things on immigration are qualified by this or that or the and actually what Reform are doing is saying, look, this is it, black and white. This is what we're going to do, and whatever. And people, there will be casualties around that, but they're saying in terms of the greater good, this is the way we go.
Some good examples would be you can't talk about Islamic terrorism in this country without going, and we need to be careful of the far right.
Yes.
No, the far right won't kill anybody.
Yeah.
One person in the last decade, an MP got killed. You can't talk about benefit fraud without then saying, yeah, but lots of people need it, and they've always got to qualify what they say.
Well, when they talk about Islamic terrorists, they say, but of course, let's remember that the majority of Muslims are peaceful, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
They always qualify everything, don't they?
Yeah.
Rather than saying we need to watch out for Islamic terrorism. What's wrong with saying that?
Yeah. But worse than that, they then talk about far right terrorism, which doesn't exist.
Yeah, correct.
So why are you bringing another problem into the mix when that problem doesn't exist?
Yes, correct.
I'm sure there is some far right people in the country, but I reckon we could fit him in this room.
Yeah, they're nothing like the force they were in the 70s.
No, exactly.
They're flaccid, they're broken, they're not anything like. They're no threat at all to society.
But every time we talk about a series, we talk about ending the illegal boats across the channel, and every time we talk about the illegal boats, what we end up talking about is the evil people smugglers.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think the people smugglers are evil. I think they're business opportunities.
Yeah.
The people want to get across the channel and are willing to pay someone to take them across the channel, so they take them. They're not evil. They're not killing people and stealing people and shipping across the channel. But they've got to qualify illegal immigrants crossing the channel with, but it's not their fault. It's these illegal people smugglers. It's just rubbish all the time.
Yeah.
And because they mix it all up, we never then get to address the real issue.
Yes.
Because they've just put a fog over everything.
Yes.
And now we're not sure what is the problem. Is it the illegal immigrants? Government's saying it's the people smugglers. And it's like, well, no, let's just deal with the problem.
That's really interesting, isn't it? You're right. We start talking about Islamic terrorism, we end up talking about the far right.
Yeah. And
it's like nothing to do with what we originally started the subject on, because that's a classic. Response when people start talking about Islamic terrorism on Question Time, wherever they'll say, yes, blah blah blah. However, we have to be careful, and then they end up talking about the far right, and we don't actually deal. And it's a way of them avoiding talking about Islamic terrorism.
It's because you could get yourself into trouble, a slip of the tongue, talking about Islamic terrorism.
Yeah.
You could have a million slips of the tongue talking about the far right. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
You can get yourself into trouble talking about poor asylum seekers escaping war-torn countries going across the channel, and we call them illegal immigrants. A slip of the tongue there, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You can say what you want about evil people smugglers, slip of the tongue all day long.
Yeah.
No one cares.
And you're right, they're deflecting, constantly deflecting.
Onto a subject that I won't get myself into trouble for.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. Of course, it's easy territory to head into, isn't it? Then they'd have to make any commitment or decision around which, and we're back to politicians again, aren't we?
And then they can make the commitments that mean nothing. We're going to clamp down on the evil people smugglers.
Yes.
Well, that's not the problem. You could invest 1,000 of them today. They'll all be replaced tomorrow because you're making millions at this.
Yeah.
Distraction technique. Did you like that video? I think you did. Hit the bell, give it a big thumbs up, comment, and don't forget I'm standing for election in Oldham East and Saddleworth. So please share this video, speak to your family and friends if you live in Greater Manchester, and if you live in Oldham East and Saddleworth, make sure you vote for me. Catch you soon.